I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Clackamas County Planning Commission, Monday, March 28th of 2022, and it is 6:30 p.m. Darcy, would you please provide a roll call?
Commissioner Peterson.
Present.
Commissioner Murphy.
Present.
Commissioner Moss.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Lopes.
Here.
Commissioner Schroedel.
Here.
Commissioner Pack.
Here.
Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
And Commissioner Pasco is absent.
Very good. Darcy, thank you very much. All right. Tonight we will be having a public hearing on housing. However, before we get into housing and going through that hearing and taking testimony, if there is anyone in the public or attendees that would like to bring up a question, a topic, anything that's not on the agenda, please feel free to do that now. And you can do that by using your raise hand feature. I see Diana, Palmer, and Stacy. Any one of you out there? No, doesn't look like we have any public comment at this time. All right, then I believe we're going to move along in our agenda. The public meeting or the public hearing is now open for the consideration of ZDO 282, Housing Strategies Phase 2, a legislative proposal to amend the Clackamas County Comprehensive Plan and Zoning and Development Ordinance. Assisting us in the hearing today are several members of the county staff, Principal Planner Martha Fritzie and Long Range Planning Manager Karen Burig. This public hearing is being conducted virtually using the Zoom platform. Panelists for today's hearing, which include members of the Planning Commission and county staff, have both audio and video capability. If the panelist is participating with audio but not video, the members of the audience will not see that panelist's name on their screen, but will hear them when they speak. Audience members who have joined the meeting will have their mics muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by county staff moderator. Audience members' video will not be turned on at any time. Today's hearing is being recorded as required by law. The county will make every effort to post the recording on the county website as soon as possible. The Planning Commission is charged with making a recommendation on the application to the Board of County Commissioners. The record of this hearing will be forwarded to the board, which will make the final decision on this matter. The board will conduct another hearing on this application on April 27th, 2022 at 10 a.m. That hearing will be de novo, meaning that the hearing will be started anew and additional testimony may be offered. Tonight's hearing will not go beyond 10 p.m. unless a majority of the planning commissioners in attendance vote to continue past that time. If not concluded, it may be continued to a date and time certain. The hearing may be continued for other reasons as well. If an announcement of an additional hearing date and time is made tonight, it will be the only notice given of that additional hearing. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. 1, Planning and Zoning Division staff report. 2, entry into the record of any additional correspondence received. 3, technical information from other government agencies. 4, testimony by representatives of recognized community planning organizations or hamlets. Maximum length, 10 minutes each. 5, testimony by any other person. Maximum length, 3 minutes per speaker or more as determined by the chair. 6, closing of the public hearing. And 7, Planning Commission discussion and action. There is a designated time during the hearing when it will be open for testimony. The chair will make it clear when this is. If you want to provide testimony, you will utilize the raise hand feature in Zoom. Attendees on PC and iPad, you have a raise hand button on the Zoom bar, top or bottom, depending on the device. Attendees by telephone use *9 to activate the raise hand feature. When the moderator switches you over to provide testimony, your screen will look different for a moment. Primarily, you will see the participants' cameras, not just the one who is speaking. Staff will call upon you when it is time for you to provide testimony. For the record, please begin by stating your name and where you are from or whom you are representing. Once you have provided your testimony, your mic will be muted and your screen will be returned to normal. The planning and zoning staff the planning and zoning division staff will now present the staff report.
Hi there. Let me get my screen share going. I have, of course, a short PowerPoint presentation this evening. There we go. And get this set up over here. All righty. Okay, just got to get everything in the right place so I can do my thing. So, good evening. We are here, as Tammy stated, for a public hearing related to the phase 2 of the Land Use Housing Strategies project, particularly talking about middle housing and urban unincorporated Clackamas County. So the proposal here today is a legislative amendment to both the Zoning and Development Ordinance, or ZDO for short, and our comprehensive plan. It technically amends 21 different sections of our zoning of the ZDO and 3 chapters of our comprehensive plan and Appendix B in our comprehensive plan. The amendments range from just very minor conforming type amendments, you know, correcting terms, to very substantive changes, and include an entirely new section, Section 845, which we'll talk about a little bit in a few minutes, which is specific regulations for certain types of middle housing. The purpose of all of these amendments primarily is to implement House Bill 2001, legislation from 2019 that mandates middle housing in certain areas in urban unincorporated Clackamas County. The amendments also implement Senate Bill 458, which came out of the 2021 legislature, which allows middle housing land divisions for middle housing that is built pursuant to House Bill 2001 rules. And it also amends a few other housing related standards that staff found in the ZDO that are intended to really facilitate the permitting process in some cases. In other cases, remove some barriers to developing middle housing and some other more affordable housing options like manufactured homes. We just thought it all fit together in the package since we were touching on so many sections and making so many changes in our urban low density residential zones. So staff's recommendation, just right up front, is approval of this file, ZDO 282, the text amendments as found in attachments A and B of your staff report. You should have received a very large packet of information, which include a staff report, a background on the project, staff's findings and recommendations, and then each of the individual zoning and development ordinance sections, and each of the comp plan sections that are proposed for amendments attached in attachments A and B, along with those little summaries explaining what specifically was changing and the purpose of the changes for each section. So just as a little background, I know that we have all talked about this, but I'm not entirely sure who's out in the audience. So I'm going to touch on it a little bit. So bear with me, please, if you've heard this before. House Bill 2001, the Middle Housing Bill, it requires the county to allow duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, or fourplexes, townhomes, and cottage clusters in urban single-family neighborhoods. And we have a hard deadline of June 30th, 2022, which is why we are starting our hearings processes now. By June 30th, 2022, we have to adopt our own zoning standards consistent with state regulations or decide to use the state's middle housing model code. If we don't do either of those things, we have to use the middle housing model code anyway. We as staff have been working on this project for well over a year, probably even close to 2, talking with the public, talking with various decision makers, including you all about how to approach middle housing. We have been given direction pretty consistently throughout this process to go ahead and create our own ZDO standards that of course would be consistent with state law rather than use the Middle Housing Model Code. So that's why we're here to consider adoption of those standards in our zoning code. So just a few pictures of middle housing to start thinking about what housing types we are considering with all of these code amendments. These here are the plexes. I'll call these plexes, duplex, triplex, and quadplex. They are 2, 3, or 4 units attached to each other, all on one lot, at least when they're initially developed. It could be something that's built brand new like this. It could be a conversion, which are internal, where there's internal entrance and then 4 units inside. The form of the development doesn't matter so much as the size and the number of units. The other middle housing types are townhomes and, townhouses and cottage clusters. Townhouses we're all pretty familiar with, row houses. They're just attached houses. The distinction between these and the one above is that they're each on their own lot already. So these are just very small lots with houses that share a common wall along the lot line. And cottage clusters are new to our zoning code. They are groupings of generally smaller homes, detached from each other. These may or may not be, but generally detached from each other and surrounding a common courtyard. And so there's some common open space for all of the residents to use. All of these middle housing types can be rented or can be owner occupied. Our zoning code does not distinguish between that, and neither does House Bill 2001. The intent was to allow for more housing choice and potentially more affordable housing choices for people by virtue of smaller units or a little bit more dense units. And this is naturally more affordable housing. It's not subsidized kind of affordable housing. So where are these urban single family neighborhoods? They're all these areas identified in yellow inside the urban growth boundary, outside of cities. It's a little hard to see, but this is McLaughlin. This is I-205, 82nd Drive, Sunnyside going out here. It's important to note as we're thinking about this, that the changes that we're considering today would only affect these yellow areas, but all of these cities here, with the exception of Johnson City, they all have to do the exact same thing. So this conversation is happening or has happened in all of these other cities. It is not just Clackamas County, and we all have to follow the same rules. So I said we had been working on this for quite some time. We actually were fortunate enough to receive a couple of grants and some consultant help to assist us in our outreach. We did fairly robust outreach for this project, included a number of discussion group meetings that happened actually in 5 different languages. Staff made a lot of presentations to CPOs, other interested groups over the last 6 months to a year. We also had 2 online surveys with a total of 864 responses. Although, I mean, there's certainly may have been some overlap in the first and second survey. I mean, each individually were pretty good responses for online surveys. And we received responses to both in all 5 languages. We also sent out over 21,000 postcards to the listed owners of all the properties in those yellow areas on the map, inviting them to a virtual Q&A session to ask staff questions, to hear a presentation, ask staff questions. We had 42 attendees, which was to me a little bit surprising given the number of postcards that went out, but the attendees were great. We had some really, really good questions, and hopefully people learned a lot in that. We also had a web page going for well over a year. Ellen Roglin with the PGA, Public and Government Affairs Division, is here listening, and she's done a great job just pushing out social media posts, email updates to our interested parties list, which now concludes over 450 names. And so there has been a fairly robust public outreach effort. And I just bring that up because we all know that's important in land use, for one, and two, we thought it was really important to reach out to communities that typically aren't involved in planning processes, which is why we had the consultant help us facilitate meetings in 5 different languages and really try to understand, within the very narrow parameters of what the state is allowing us to do under House Bill 2001, really try to understand what the community felt, how the community felt about it, what changes that we had some choices on were seen as beneficial or were preferred. And so we wrapped that feedback into our ZDO amendments. I think it's fair to say that we did get a very mixed reaction to middle housing. There are people who are very, very concerned, and some people who are very, very excited about it. And so there's definitely a wide range of reactions and feedback that we received. So what exactly are these ZDO amendments doing? Well, I can tell you what they're not doing. They are not rezoning anyone's property. What they are doing, first and foremost, is allowing all of those middle housing types in the applicable zones, in the zoning districts that were in that yellow. The changes clarify which specific development standards apply to middle housing, because you will recall maybe part of House Bill 2001 stipulates that we allow middle housing, but we allow it by the same process as a single family dwelling. And so in other words, middle housing, we can't force middle housing to go through like a conditional use permit or additional land use. It's just a building permit. And so we have to know what development standards we're looking at when we're looking at the building permit. As I noted, it includes an entirely new section that has all the siting and design standards that are unique to triplexes, quadplexes, townhouses, and cottage clusters. Duplexes don't really get unique standards. The rules are very clear that duplexes really have to be treated the same as single family dwellings. But these other housing types do get some, there's some room to have specific siting and design standards. One of the big ones in here is the minimum lot sizes. We've had some conversations about this in the past with you all on the Planning Commission. And the amendments do establish a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet for triplexes, 7,000 square feet for quadplexes and cottage clusters. And that, for a number of reasons, that is the largest minimum lot size that we are allowed to establish for those housing types. And I can get into that if anyone has questions about that. It also establishes a maximum density for townhomes, which is essentially 3 or 4 times what we think of as density for a single family home. It's pretty consistent with allowing triplexes, quadplexes, and things like that, because all of those are, 3 to 4 times the density. It also establishes minimum parking requirements. They are established at 1 off-street space per dwelling. Again, this is the maximum that we are allowed to require under House Bill 2001. It doesn't mean a developer couldn't come in and provide more parking on site. We can allow more, but we cannot require more. It also identifies specific sidewalk requirements, a topic that we've had a lot of conversation about. As you're all aware, the county has a fee in lieu of program. And the fee in lieu of program we are not proposing to change anything about it. Essentially what that means is single family homes, duplexes, and triplexes would be allowed to, or could qualify for a fee in lieu of, to pay a fee in lieu of instead of building the sidewalk, and that fee goes into a fund that then builds sidewalks somewhere else in the urban area. Any development with 4 or more homes, like quadplex, townhouses with 4 or more, cottage clusters, would actually have to build the frontage improvements that are required under the ZDO. And that's no different. That's just the effect that it has on middle housing. And there are a number of other changes that are proposed around the development standards and siting standards for middle housing. But essentially it's to clarify that they will be treated very similarly to single family dwellings. So I said there are a few other amendments in this package, and so the amendments also would do these 4 additional things. One is to allow the middle housing land division. So once the middle housing is established or proposed, the property could then be further divided so that there's 1 middle housing unit on per lot. That's something that we have to allow under Senate Bill 458 that came out of the 2021 legislature. We do not have to incorporate it into our zoning code, but the other option is to implement it straight out of state law, and that becomes a little difficult at times. And so we decided to incorporate that into our zoning code. So it fits in our structure, uses the terms that we use. And so our staff and hopefully the public understand it a little bit better. There is a proposal also to remove the 3,000 square foot minimum lot size that our zoning code currently has for residential development. And you'll recall this is in our code right now. And this simply means that if you happen to have a legal lot that is smaller than 3,000 square feet, it was established, prior to our modern zoning codes or even almost modern zoning codes. If you have an existing legal lot that's that small, you cannot build on it right now, except in certain zones. What this proposal would do would eliminate that minimum lot size and allow any legal lot to be developed upon, assuming, of course, that it meets all the development standards, the lot coverage, the setbacks, and providing parking and things like that. And so it would still have to meet the development standards. It would just would have the opportunity to. And there's a number of reasons that we're doing that. One is that we don't really know why it's there to begin with, quite frankly, as staff. It's been there for quite some time. There also was some legislation in 2019 that arguably might apply to the unincorporated county area, but may not. And so rather than have that argument, we have decided just to, at this point, propose that we implement that, and that piece of legislation essentially directed certain jurisdictions to allow development of these types of lots. And then finally, House Bill 2001, our read of the duplex provisions seem to require us to allow for the development of a duplex on any size lot. And so it wouldn't really make sense to allow a duplex and not any other type of residential development. So that's that one. And then there is a proposal to amend the lot coverage standards for the R7 through R30 zoning districts. Those are the urban low density zoning districts that have a 7,000 to 30,000 square foot lot size for density calculations. Currently, the lot coverage is 40%. There's exceptions for certain lots that were existing prior to zoning. There's exceptions if you're building townhouses on the lot. And there's also exceptions if you're building a planned unit development. And so rather than have a lot of exceptions, we are proposing to sort of streamline the lot coverage and for those zones, instead of being 40%, make it 50%. That would be the same as some of the other low density residential zones, and it would just be the same across the board, and would eliminate the need for most of the exceptions. And then finally, repealing section zoning ZDO section 824, which is manufactured homes. There again is some legislation that has come out of this year's legislature that, as far as I know, is still on the governor's desk for signature. Jennifer might be able to update us on that. But it would require jurisdictions to remove specific design standards for manufactured homes, which is what we have and we're proposing to remove right now while we can wrap it into this package. It's just a little bit more efficient and convenient for us to do it now. And again, we talked a little bit about this at the last work session. The effect of that would be that a manufactured dwelling could be used potentially as an accessory dwelling unit, and may be able to be used in a cottage cluster. So that was a lot. That's the high level of what all of these ZDO amendments are doing. And to go along with these ZDO amendments, of course, we have our comprehensive plan, which is the overarching goals and policies for the county that then direct us how to implement through the zoning code and other documents. Because we are making so many changes to our urban area, it requires us to take a look at our comprehensive plan also. We essentially rewrote chapter 6, although a lot of the policies that were in there are essentially the same. They've been consolidated, they've been reworded. Some of the language has been updated to be a little bit more modern and appropriate. And we definitely were using an eye toward equity and inclusion when we were amending chapter 6. And it was just really outdated. I don't think it's been updated since early 1980s, maybe 1990-ish. And it was just time. So it has undergone a pretty substantial rewrite. A lot of the policies have been reworked. We have also gone through chapters 4 and 10 to make sure that there are no conflicting policies that would cause a problem with the implementation of the middle housing and House Bill 2001. So as part of the staff report and as part of our legislative amendment, we have to look at all of the applicable regulations, do an analysis and findings, and make sure that we are compliant with all of them. There's several pages in some detail in your staff report. Essentially, it is all these items listed up here. We have to comply with statewide planning goals. It was a number of them this time. And staff did, after the analysis, find that the proposed amendments are in compliance with all of them. The ORSs and the OARs are the state statutes and administrative rules that directed us on how to implement middle housing, what we could and could not do in our zoning code when adopting changes to allow for middle housing, and then also for the middle housing land divisions. Staff has been pretty diligent in writing the amendments to make sure that as we are making these changes, that they did comply with the rules that were found in the administrative rules. And so staff believes that everything that we've done is indeed compliant. Because we are in the metro area, we also have to look to the Metro Urban Growth Management Functional Plan. Titles 1 and 7 talk about housing capacity and options. This was pretty easy because we're increasing housing capacity and options. And honestly, the Urban Growth Management Functional Plan talks a little bit more about how you could exchange or decrease capacity. Increasing capacity is not addressed too much. And in fact, it encourages increasing capacity and options and affordability. So we are compliant with that. And then the county comprehensive plan and ZDO essentially contains like the procedural elements and what needs to be done for notification and public outreach and the public hearings, et cetera, for a legislative amendment. And those all have been complied with in this case. And as such, staff is recommending approval of all of the proposed amendments under ZDO, under file ZDO 282, and that's it. There is, of course, the webpage that I talked about earlier. If anyone's interested in looking for a whole lot more information about this project, including old meetings, audio and or video of old meetings, links to all of the code amendments, and also there will be links to future meetings and hearings that are going to happen for this for these amendments. And that's it. I'm done talking.
Wow, Martha, very impressive. Thank you very, very much. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff? Please raise your hand if there are. And Michael Wilson has a question.
Okay, got myself unmuted here. How many additional housing units do you think will be available in our Plaquemines County based upon, I'm talking about estimates now. I know you're not going to know the exact number, but what do you think is going to happen over the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, the short answer is I don't know, but I can say that early on in this process, there was some analysis done and some estimates made sort of broadly about expected infill and increases based on middle housing. And the estimates that I've seen are 1 to 3%. The one on the lower end would be for more developed areas, like most of our urban area, as infill, and 3% would be more greenfield, vacant areas. The time frame on that was only, I believe, 2 to 3 years, and so it's hard to say. But I think it's hard to say, give you specific numbers, but I think it is fair to say that it's going to be a fairly moderate rate of infill, if not even slow rate of infill. We've had a fair amount of interest, but not people, banging down the doors.
When you say interest, are you talking about interest from developers or from potential owners, renters, etc.?
We've had interest from developers. We've had interest from individual property owners wondering if they could do more with their property and
Okay,
maybe
now-
generate
now-
some income for themselves.
Now, with that, what is the current, I know you probably don't know the exact numbers, et cetera, but I'm kind of interested in what is the current pricing for these various types of units within the areas we're talking about, like a duplex, a triplex, or a quadplex, or a community college, or a cottage arrangement. What are we looking at right now as a basis for what the pricing is?
Well, so I don't know. The pricing of these will be up to the market. And because some of these housing types are not allowed or easily allowed in this area, I don't really have a good sense for what they would be priced at. And it depends on the market as well. They theoretically, because they are smaller and because there are more units on a property, will be less than what detached single family dwellings in any given area are selling for. But it depends on the conditions of the dwellings too. So there's really no way to peg a number on that one either.
Well, I guess part of my question was directed at a comment that was made by Commissioner Moss at our last session, where he was talking about how is this really going to solve our homeless or a houseless situation if the prices are the same and they continue to go up. We're not going to see any help in that area.
Well, I don't expect middle housing is going to solve the houseless problem, because that's not the market for middle housing types. But what it is well, there's two things. One, it's part of a larger project that we're working on, dealing with the whole continuum of housing. So anything from shelter to subsidized low income to middle housing. Those are all things that we are trying to affect through our zoning code and facilitate the development of. So middle housing is really targeted more toward, we used to call it workforce housing maybe, or it's the moderate income households that would hopefully be able to afford this type of housing. And if there's more housing available at a certain moderate price point, it frees up potentially housing that's at a lower price point. If somebody's living in a rental and can't afford to buy the more expensive single family, they could maybe move around. And so the more options there are across the board at different price points, the more mobility there is, for all income levels.
So when you previously said you're talking about maybe a 3% increase in the housing in this particular area, this particular price point, how many are we really talking about? Are we talking about 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 more opportunities here? 3%, what is that?
Well, again, most of ours will be infill, so it would be at the lower percentage. And I mean, I don't know. I don't have a specific number. we've got over 20,000 lots there, 21,000 lots that we sent notices to. I mean, I guess you could maybe base it on that. I don't know that all of them are actually would be able to build middle housing.
Okay, and I believe Commissioner Pack, last session we had, talked about what was going to be the impact on the services available, such as health, schools, things like waste management, sewerage, all that. Is that been taken into account for this increase in the density in some of these zones where we're talking about putting additional units? How
Well,
are
to
those?
so- to s-
How have those community services been communicated with, and what is their input been to this proposal?
Well, to some extent, it has been considered, yes. And so you have to keep in mind, first of all, that this is a slow rate of infill development. Early on in the process, there was an opportunity that was given under House Bill 2001 for jurisdictions to request a time extension to implement this middle housing if there were specific service or specific areas where there was a service concern or would be a concern with this 1 to 3% expected growth. And it was specific to sewer, water, stormwater, and transportation facilities. And so at the time, we did reach out to all of our service providers, because you have to understand that most of the services in Clackamas County, sewer and water, are not actually provided by the county. They are provided by separate service districts. So we reached out to them, and we did not hear from any of them that they had any specific areas of concern given the expected growth rates from middle housing. I would expect that all the service providers would be keeping an eye on growth and assessing their systems just like we do at the county with our roads. And as the middle housing development is happening, be able to understand better where their system may or may not need improvements.
Okay, thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. That were excellent questions. Just for the benefit of our attendees, I believe we had not one, but actually 2 study sessions on this. So we spent many hours going through this piece by piece and asking possibly hundreds of questions. So you're probably not going to see a bombardment of questions at this point because we've spent quite a bit of time on this. Do we have another question from one of our commissioners? Okay. Well, I'm going to move along, but I'm sorry, Murph. Please, Commissioner Murphy, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Stevens. I'm a little behind the 8 ball here. I've been studying for the last 4 or 5 days of this, and I probably can come up with 100 questions, but I'm not going to. But I do have some questions that I just find I'm not real clear on, and that is when we're figuring out a lot percentage of usage, how much of this home are we going to put on this lot? Are we considering the parking spot also within that percentage, Martha?
I know that is for structures. That includes all the structures. If there was a detached garage or some sort of shop or shed, those would be counted, but it does not count the driveway.
Okay, thank you. That really clears that up. Expedited land divisions. Now, this is something that I read that we'd be dealing with down the road, I would imagine, trying to figure a way to expedite our land divisions as middle housing grows.
No, expedited land divisions are a process that's allowed under state law, and that is the process that these middle housing land divisions have to go through. It's not something that is currently in our code, so we've had to weave it in, and it does contain faster timelines for decision making related to these particular kinds of land divisions.
Thank you. Another question while I have you, I guess, would be awful lot of testimony on sidewalks, on having sidewalks. I mean, they were recommending that sidewalks be built for middle housing, from what I could tell from the testimony that came in. So I was digging through this a little bit, and ZDO 1007-08, Philos for middle housing. It describes how that philo will be added into capital improvement projects, which is what an SDC is for, if I'm correct. So we actually have 2 funds now from that one permit going into an SDC. That's just building the actual cost of that property that much more, as I see it. When I think we should be doing, as the testimonies that have been coming in, is building that sidewalk as the middle housing is put in place, because that's the cheapest it'll ever be done. And this is something that we've talked about before. And yeah, since we already have a fund that's established from that service or system development fund going into these capital improvements for sidewalks and transportation, I think that's already covered. And this philo should be used, should not be used, should be a sidewalk put in place. I'll stop there.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Murphy. Did you want to respond to that, Martha, or are you? I know we talked about it at the last session.
I think, not to totally punt, I think Karen or Jennifer may be able to explain better the difference between what the SDC funds and the philo funds are used for, because I think it is something different.
So the SDC funds, they can only be used on projects that are supported by new growth. And so there's a specific list of projects that can use SDC funds. They can't be used just anywhere. Whereas the philo funds are specifically they can only be used on sidewalk improvement projects that are kind of the lower cost connecting, kind of the missing sidewalk projects is what they can be used on. So it really is a different type of fund. They're different purposes. And then I think we've also shared, we are really looking at investing those funds near schools, in areas that haven't seen that investment in the past. And there's kind of a certain set of criteria that we look at for investing the philo funds.
Thank you, Karen, very much. Commissioner Moss, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair Stevens. Another concern of mine, in addition to what Commissioner Wilson brought up on my behalf, is the safety concern of these duplexes, triplexes, as opposed to if there were fires on it that displace a lot of families in that. So I'm wondering, in these conversations, have we had any conversation with the local fire districts? And have they expressed any concern about this? Or do we know if any of the state legislators from our delegation looked at the safety issue of that for potential fires with these developments?
I guess not specifically in the way that you're asking. I mean, I know that the building code and the fire code have very specific requirements for when dwellings are attached to each other. And so any duplex or triplex or quadplex townhouse would have to comply with that. And so that's already factored in to the construction. I don't know that there were necessarily any additional fire concerns. Fire districts, we've had conversations with them, but most, asking questions. They're certainly aware of it, but I've asked a lot of questions about things like that because I didn't know.
Thanks, Martha.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. I have a real quick question for Jennifer Hughes. We have a hand up, a question from one of our attendees. Do we need to wait until testimony time for those questions? I thought so. I didn't want to be ignoring you, Palmer. I just want to let you know there will be an opportunity soon to bring on your questions and testimony. So keep your hand up. Yes, and now Commissioner Wilson, did you have another question?
Yes, I have a question for Karen. On this philo issue, I have been very concerned about that ever since I learned about it. This seems like to me an opportunity for a constructor to get out of developing something that should be developed, such as a sidewalk, and then other developers being able to tap into these funds and possibly save money on their implementation of a sidewalk. Uh, how do we make sure that doesn't happen? I mean, here we have a contractor that says, I'm going to pay this philo, and then another contractor that comes in and builds a sidewalk said, okay, I'm going to make a connection between these sidewalks, and I'm going to get funding from the county in order to make that connection. So I'm going to save a bit of money. I want to make sure that we're getting our bang for our buck here.
So I appreciate that question. I do want to highlight that the actual changes to the section related to philo are only for clarification. Like, we're not proposing to make any substantive changes to either the types of uses that currently can access philo or not. We're not adding any additional uses that would be allowed to take advantage of the philo provision. So I just want to be clear about that. And Martha, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but basically we are not, because one of the questions that we had considered in the past was whether or not we would add the fourplex into the provision that that would be allowed to take advantage of the philo provisions, and that we did not do that. So that's not part of the proposal. The only kind of cross out and red line that's a part of the philo proposal has to do with changing of words, where before we called it a 2-family dwelling and now we call it a duplex, that type of a thing. So it's not any new uses related to philo. So I do want to be clear about that. I think that the second thing, though, to answer your question is that while a single family, a small unit developer, a duplex, doing a gosh, I'm thinking of the wrong word. So if someone was going to partition their property and they ended up taking advantage of philo, those monies are not used by another developer. Other developers cannot come in and ask to use the philo fees. Those are used internally by the Clackamas County Capital Program to build connections that are missing. And so I think in the past, we've talked about I believe that's 4 different, maybe 5 different places upon which we've used those philo fees to add sidewalks into a project, but it hasn't been developer driven.
So these philo funds then are a separate line item, and they're only used by a certain part of our county. Is that what I'm hearing? I mean, the county commissioners can't say these are public funds and we're going to be using them for other projects.
Correct. They can only be used for sidewalk investments.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. All right, unless there's any other questions from commissioners, we'll proceed. Very good. Okay. Have we received any correspondence on this matter other than those items in our meeting packets?
Yes, I have. Commissioner, I received an email today with testimony from a gentleman named Nick, and he asked that I send it to you, but I'd rather just read it at this point because it was pretty late in the afternoon. And it says, Martha, thank you very much for your time and help. I would like the Planning Commission to consider allowing ADUs on structures such as duplexes and triplexes that will be allowed under the current middle housing proposals. and not limit an ADU to only single-family residences or in certain zoning areas, townhomes. Thanks again for your help, Nick. And so that will be entered into the record as Exhibit 9. You have Exhibits 1 through 8 in your packet.
Very
That's
good.
all. That's all I've received.
Wonderful. Thank you, Martha, very much for sharing that. All right. Are there any government agencies here to provide technical information related to this proposal? Please use the raise hand feature if you are in the audience and wish to testify on behalf of a government agency. I see Palmer. So Darcy, could you bring Palmer over? And Palmer, if you would share your name, please, and the government agency that you're representing.
I'm not a government agency. I was tuned into this meeting to provide input as a private citizen. So
Oh,
I don't,
okay. Okay.
and I probably pushed my raise the hand button at the wrong time. So I do want to provide some input.
Okay.
It's appropriate for me, but I'm not a government agency.
Okay. There'll be a time for you to come and share your thoughts and questions.
So maybe I'll push the little button that says lower hand.
Okay, that would be a good idea. And then we'll see you back here pretty soon. Hang in there. All right, were there anyone else representing a government agency? I'm not seeing anyone else's hand up. All right, let's move along. Are there any representatives of community planning organizations or hamlets here to speak? Each organization will have 10 minutes to testify. Please use the raise hand feature if you are in the audience and wish to testify on behalf of a CPO or hamlet. Okay, we're going to move along then. Does any other person, here it comes, is there any other person wish to speak on this proposal? And normally we allow up to 3 minutes per individual. However, we only have five attendees. So we're going to expand that this evening to 5 minutes per speaker. It doesn't mean you have to fill the whole 5 minutes, but you will have up to that time. And so guess who's first? Palmer, yay. So Palmer, if you would give us your full name and the area that you live in, that would be enough.
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Oh, very well. Thank you.
Well, my name is Palmer Kellum. I was born in Oregon City in 1951. I've lived in Plaquemines County my whole life, the last 37 years with my wife in the Jennings Lodge, Oak Grove area. Getting straight to the point, HB 2001 is bad legislation, which is being shoved down our collective throats by the state of Oregon. It started in the city of Portland and is now spreading like COVID to the rest of the state, thanks to Tina Kotek and her co-conspirators in the Oregon legislature. I think Clackamas County does a pretty good job with zoning and planning. We do not need the state of Oregon interfering with our efforts. This is not a state issue, in my opinion. It is a community issue. And I don't think the state should be messing with it at all. HB 2001 is being sold to us as providing, quote, more housing choices more people can afford. The truth of the matter is that it's really all about infill, that dreaded word that everybody knows and nobody wants to talk about. Packing as many people as possible into a limited space. The unincorporated area in which I live is being subjected to House Bill 2001 because it is deemed to be, quote, urban unincorporated area with urban services as defined by ORS 195.065. It goes on to say that urban services means that the area is included in a service district boundary. I've been in conversation and discussion with an Ethan Stuckmeyer from DLCD at the state of Oregon about this, okay? In section 4 of this provisions, paragraphs A through G, ORS 195.065 lists specific urban services that must be in place in order for an unincorporated area to fall under the requirement of HB 2001. as follows. A, sanitary services. B, water. C, fire protection. D, parks. E, open space. F, recreation. G, streets, roads, and mass transit. There is no doubt that our area here in Jennings Lodge, Oak Lodge, is being well served by some of our existing urban services for some of these criteria. It is also true that our urban services are lacking in others. Without sufficient urban services available in all categories, included in 195-065, the Jennings Lodge, Oak Lodge unincorporated area does not meet the criteria for HB 2001, and it should specifically be excluded from its requirements. In conclusion, I want to emphasize that the Clackamas County Planning Commission is not to be held responsible for HB 2001 and its provisions. The state of Oregon has shoved this down your throats for implementation, much like it has our community for the consequences that will be after the fact. What I'm asking is for the Planning Commission to start looking at ways to not implement HB 2001 rather than how to implement it. I thank you very much for your input. And if I scripted this at 3 minutes, I should be close. If you have any other question, I have lots of data to share with you. I am rather opinionated about this. I've lived here my whole life. I think the people that started HB 2001 have already wrecked their community, and I think they've got eyes on mine, and I don't want it to go the way that theirs has. If I want to live in Portland and be subjected to that density and the garbage and everything else available for them, I live in Portland, but I live in Jennings Lodge, Oak Lodge, and I like it out here. And I really hate to see the state in pushing their weight around, trying to tell my county and my community how we're going to live our lives.
Palmer, thank you very much. If you'll stay on with us, I believe Commissioner Peterson might have a comment or question.
I'd like to understand better what services are insufficient in the Jennings Lodge. That's the basis for your argument.
Well,
Could you
I have some favorites, and I have other people that are community activists that have some other ones. Water is not very well defined. We all drink out of the Clackamas River, and it's probably no secret to you that the Clackamas River is overcommitted. The amount of permits that are out there for water to be extracted from the river actually exceed the flow of the river. And we really didn't have much of an issue in our area until the city of Gladstone put the 3-foot, 36-inch diameter pipe under the river and started pumping water to the west side. You probably know that Clackamas River water via City of Gladstone goes to Tiger, Lake Oswego, not sure about West Lynn. But ever since that they started pumping that water, late summer, early fall, we get a notice, a letter, whatever, from the water providers. I think it's called Clackamas Water. And it's like, well, don't drink too much. Don't be watering your lawn. Don't be washing your car. The river flows in the Clackamas are pretty low. We didn't have a whole lot of rainfall last year. And I think it's unwise to want to infill the area with more water users when we're getting warnings that our water is inadequate the way that it sits. So I guess you call that drinking water. There's a more technical word for it. The other part of water that were inadequate is water runoff, storm sewers. If you know much about this area, Jennings Lodge, Oak Lodge is kind of at the bottom of a hill, and the water all drains off from the hills above Oakfield Road, and it rolls down this way. And when it rains very much, we get overwhelmed. My backyard turns into a pond twice a year. Just covers up with water because all the water from the streets runs off into it, and it sits there until it can leach its way through the grass. If that was a bunch of roofs from the triplex or the fourplex that I put in there because I wanted more density in my area and the driveways and the parking spaces that go along with it, that water wouldn't be able to leach into the soil, and it'd be even more of a problem. We also have drainage problems in the, they call it the Boardman wetlands area or the Boardman swamp. Heavy rains overwhelms the ability of the swamp to pass the water. Houses on the bottom of Boardman Avenue, and I believe it's Paradise Court, that the streets on the bottom that are parallel to the McGoffin Boulevard, they're prone to flooding. And when that happens, it floods Springfield Park, and then it just, we don't do a very good job with water runoff. And I've had these conversations with the engineer at Oak Lodge, and I think that they, you know, they're trying, but they talk about funding, and they talk about, they don't have a very good agreement with the county sometimes. And is that street water, or is that water that fell on people's lots? It's problematic. So those are my two big ones. Surface water runoff, which will be adversely impacted by more roofs and more driveways, and also the lack of drinking water, as per the letters that they send us every year. If there's not a water situation, I don't know why they're just trying to scare us. But we get those letters every late summer, early fall. And about that time, if you go to Clackamas Park, you look out the Clackamas River, and it's barely a trickle. I have other friends that feel that other provisions, recreation, open space, and the comprehensive plan are have not been fully implemented, and they think that's a problem. I haven't studied that one, but I know quite a bit about the water. So if you have to have all these things in place to be subject to House Bill 2001, my community shouldn't be considered. We should be outside the requirements of HB 2001. So that's my main point. And I've had conversations with lots of people, and I tried to do as much of a deep dive into HB 2001 as I can, and that's pretty much what I've come up with.
Thank you. That was helpful. I appreciate you elaborating on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Palmer, I hope you have intentions of testifying at the Board of County Commissioners meeting as well. I think you brought up some very important concerns.
Yes, ma'am.
Good, good, good.
I would have been at the last meeting, but I couldn't get my Zoom to work. I've been working on that. Martha tried to help me, but I didn't. I got it together this time, though.
Good job. All right.
So I'm planning on keeping the Zoom attachment working better. And yes, I will be offering input at the next meeting also.
Very good.
Official to provide, I noticed that Martha was talking about that some letters that came in were part of the record. Would it also be beneficial in advance of the meeting to provide written input to go in the packet? I thought it would be better to have a personal touch and be available, you know, in person. I really like to be in the room with you guys rather than looking at the screen talking. But is the written testimony a good idea for somebody that wishes to support their opinion?
Excuse me. I think, can somebody else answer that? I'm coughing.
I'll jump in. I think the staff and the commission, we appreciate both, actually. The written testimony is part. So, you know, if you feel strongly, I would suggest you to do both. I would submit something in writing and testify as well.
Well, thank you very much. I've got more to say than I could put in my 3 minutes. So I'll put it in writing next time, and I'll bring that forth. And I truly believe what I said about the Plaquemines County commissioners and the Clackamas County Planning Commission. This isn't your fault. This was brought to you by the state, okay? And in my opinion, as an Oregonian, they got no business talking to us about our local community housing, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, whatever it is. That's not their business. This is a community issue. and they should just butt out and do their thing, but they shouldn't be picking on us. And, you know, I get kind of excited about that. I've been around here a long time, and I take Oregon very seriously. I take my community very seriously. And we are infilling out here in the boonies in this unincorporated area. We may not be infilling fast enough for some of the politicians from the jurisdictions north of us, but they really want to force their way of life on us, and I don't agree with it. But thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to mention that Jennifer Hughes wanted to make a comment. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I just wanted to mention that the board is back to meeting in person. They're offering the Zoom option as well, as they are required to do. By law now, there has to be a digital option, but the board is meeting in person. So if you were wanting to testify in person at the Board of County Commissioners, you will be able to do that at their hearing in April.
Is it going to open back up after the little dust up they had a few weeks ago?
It is.
They're open. They're back in
Yep.
person. Yes.
Is it be the Thursday at 10 o'clock business meeting?
So yeah, it's when land use hearings are on Wednesdays. So Martha, remind me the exact date of the board hearing.
I can check the.
It's April
April
20th.
27th.
Yeah, at 10 a.m. So you can go to the fourth floor on the King Road building and testify.
I've been there. I know that's
Okay.
surprising.
Okay.
That's surprising, yeah. But thank you so much. I
Oh,
didn't know put it back up, and it's for me, it's a much more equitable way to do business.
Yeah. Palmer, thank you again, and we appreciate your testimony very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else out there in attendee land that would like to testify or questions or? Okay, wow. All right, I think we're going to move along then. The public testimony portion of this hearing is now closed. For the commissioners, do you have any final questions for staff this evening? All right. If not, I do believe, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Wilson, go ahead, please.
Yes, are there any plans for any metrics to be put in place to measure how well we're doing with this as far as accomplishing our stated mission of increasing the housing density and providing more housing for our communities? Any metrics put in place to see what that's going to affect, and also what the cost is going to be for those? We could find out what current costs are for housing now. Implementing this plan, and let's say 1, 2, 3 years, how much have we increased our housing density, and at what cost for the individuals that are receiving those benefits of housing?
Well, those are very good ideas. And I think that you all will recall the past phase of this housing project where we made some initial zoning changes to different zones. You all asked us to create some metrics to track that, and that I have not forgotten about that. All those changes became effective on January 1st. And I have a big fat note to myself, and I've been noodling it around a little bit. And I think that creating some metrics to track middle housing are also appropriate. I don't know exactly what those would be, but I feel like there's got to be a way that we can do that, and it would be really, really good information. You're right. And so I will add that to my list, because I kind of feel like it might even be easier than tracking some of the other changes that we made. Excuse me, I'm going a little hoarse.
I really think that would be very important to as we move forward here with this, to see if we are actually accomplishing what we're trying to do. And if we're not, we're making some big mistakes here.
And I
Well, and quite
believe-
frankly, it's going to be important for any future infrastructure planning also. So, I mean, I think it will benefit a lot of different agencies. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
if I'm not mistaken, I do believe, Commissioner Wilson, you asked for the same thing when we were addressing affordable housing. There was some way to track that. So I think that would be a very complimentary to see two types of tracking on that. And then Commissioner Peterson?
Yeah, I was just following up. I think I had talked about that metric back on the other one when we were talking about the multifamily housing. And I guess the question I would have is, do we have any data to track what it was like before versus what it has been like after, for example? I realize there's some new opportunities that didn't exist before. For example, some of these areas where you're allowing duplexes and triplexes on lots you couldn't do before. But and I'm kind of just thinking out loud here a little bit, is there a way to go back and look at, what are all the permits that were issued in the last 5 years? What were they for? And then what does it look like? What does the trend look like now? And if there's no difference in the trends, kind of what Commissioner Wilson was saying is, if contractors still want to build big houses because they make more money than these other opportunities, then yeah, this didn't work. But if in fact we find that there has been an increase, then we can say, well, okay, I guess it was worth doing. So it seems to me it's one thing just to track it, but you need some kind of way to compare as well. And I don't know how easy that is for you. It's just a thought, something to think about.
Thanks, Commissioner Peterson. Commissioner Murphy, did you have a question?
Yes, I'd just like to comment on Tom and Michael's comments too. I think tracking is most important, and that we fine tune that. So yes, we can find out if we're putting people in affordable homes, and we have to have a metrics that we can access to say that we're only putting people of above middle class or something in this, and we still are lacking in affordable homes. Bottom line homes are now being bought and fixed up and sold as higher incomes. We still need housing for these middle to low income people. They're our community, they're our brothers and sisters, they're everybody. We need to embrace them and put them under roofs. And hopefully this will be somewhat of a start, and I think that system development charges was something that does need to be looked at. And how can, we have to be able to increase our capacities with capital improvements, just as Palmer was talking about our water issues, major issues. But if it's preventing people from getting in homes, we need to look at it. And we need to be able to track this so we know that we have hard facts.
Thank you, Commissioner Murphy. Very good point. A real quick question before I bring on Commissioner Wilson.
Yes, yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner Wilson.
It seems like I remember seeing some charts that were put together by the Planning Commission that showed housing in various types, and also what the median income was for the various types of people that were, residing in those houses. So I think that some of that data is already available, and it's just a matter of putting say, here is the point where we're going forward with this new middle housing issue, and then taking a look and see, well, the housing market has, the cost of houses have gone up. Has the folks that are occupying those, has their income gone up? Is it 25 or 30% of their income that's going for housing? What is it as we move forward here? And that would give us some type of a metric to see, are we trying to accomplish this mission of providing housing for the people in our county? So that's all my comments are.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. All right, I think we've asked our final questions of staff. So now is the time for deliberation, which is going around and asking each of the commissioners to give their statements, their questions, not really questions, we're past questions. I guess their feeling about moving forward on this or not, or so. Commissioner Peterson, did you want to begin?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I just want to say that I actually watched the proceedings that I missed this morning. So I had the benefit of hearing all of your comments, concerns, and discussion. Although the nice thing about the recorded one is I could play it a lot faster. So I could listen to it at 1.5 or 2, depending on how fast you guys can talk, which was actually quite nice. I got through it pretty quickly. I guess I would like to say, there's, we all probably have various thoughts about what the state did, and that's really out of our control. And so I would like to compliment staff on working with this. This was a lot of changes that had to be thought through in order to figure out how to make this work. And all the time that you've spent with us, educating us and answering all our questions. So first and foremost, I'd like to congratulate and thanks the staff for a job really well done, as always, but nonetheless, I just want you to know, appreciate all the work you did putting this together. So having said that, I really don't have anything. I'm perfectly comfortable with the recommendations the staff have made. So I support, I don't really have, I mean, we've made some comments specific to tracking it, but that's not really what, that's kind of a, a side note thing. But in terms of what they presented to us, I think they've done a good job, and I support the staff recommendation.
Commissioner Peterson, thank you. And thank you for leading us off this evening. Commissioner Moss, would you like to deliberate, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Stevens. And yeah, Tom, exactly right. Jennifer, Martha, Karen, Ellen, appreciate all the work you guys put into this. I still, as I did with the affordable housing, the first part 1, I still have deep concerns about this process and what it's going to do to the character of our county, and just thinking about the different areas of the beautiful aspects that we have in our county, that we start putting these townhouses and duplexes in, that it's going to change that and take away from the beauty that we have. And plus the not knowing of anything of what these homes are going to cost, not knowing how many are going to be potentially be put in, not having any information other than some interest from developers, that I would be more prone to look at this if we had developers say, I'm ready to go. As soon as this is approved, we'll get developments in the ground. Because I'm not seeing that, I have deep concerns. We have inflation costs are going up. The construction costs to build these units is going to be probably 3 to 4 times more than it was in the last decade. And looking through the packet of the comments that we got in support of this, there wasn't too many. So I haven't had that feeling, that ground swelling support from the entire community of the county that this is a good idea. So I can't get there. I appreciate staff working this, but I just think this program is a mistake at this time. That's where I'm at.
Great. Commissioner Moss, thank you. Very good thoughts. Commissioner Lopes, would you like to deliberate, please?
Yes, I realize that this is something that we didn't dream up. The state came up with this, and we have to do something. I know that we either have to implement the state's version of this or our own. And so we've gone about and done a very good job of trying to make it better. I feel that that we're doing the best we can, in other words, and it's better for us to move forward with the changes that we've made than to go with the House Bill 2000 and whatever it is, and one, as it was, because there were some real flaws in that. So we're improving upon something. But overall, I don't agree with it. I agree with what much of what's been said here tonight, certainly with what attendee Palmer noted, Commissioner Moss. I don't feel that this is going to solve the problem for affordable housing and middle income housing. That's kind of a term that's not really clearly defined. We haven't really gotten down to the nitty gritty of what are the prices. I think making all these units, duplexes and triplexes, it may just be an opportunity for construction companies and developers to make more money and not really provide the housing that's needed, which is a really truly affordable housing. 500,000 and 300,000 are not affordable prices for people who make minimum wage or moderate incomes. So I don't think it's going to really solve anything. I think it's not controllable in the sense that the builders can come in and build and charge whatever. And again, they can make lots of money and not really create the housing that's needed. So we kind of are stuck between a rock and a hard place. And I want to vote to implement the changes that we made, because what the option against that is worse. But at the same time, I think attendee Palmer had a good concept in that maybe down the road we can explore something that we can do to get away from this or around this. And maybe that's through the compilation of metrics down the road. Maybe there'll be new legislation based on metrics that counties, provide to them, saying, hey, this hasn't worked. So I don't want us to lose track of that. In other words, I'm going to have to vote to support it because it's better than the alternative. But again, I'd like to see if we could work forward in whatever way, that's metrics or any other way, to truly reach the goal of providing housing for people. And like Commissioner Murph said, same thing, it's not really reaching out and doing what it needs to do. So sorry about the grandstanding there and all that, but that's my thoughts on it.
No, it's wonderful. Really good to hear all of your thoughts on it, Commissioner Lopes. Thank you for sharing those. I do believe Commissioner Murphy's next.
Thank you, Chair Tammy. And I really want to thank planning. Jennifer, thank you. Martha, Karen, Ellen, and Joy, thank you for such an excellent job of what you've done. Your reach out is just incredible. I'm just amazed at the talents that you have, that you brought to this commission that has so much talent also to bring together and come to decisions. I just applaud it. And this is a brainstorming to try and find a solution for our housing issues. Where do you put people? We have to put them somewhere. So everyone deserves a home. And we're doing what we can, and I'm glad to be a part of it. And yeah, I vote to move forward with what planning recommends.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Murphy, very much. I'm going to pick and choose. So how about Commissioner Pack? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Pack, and then we'll go to Commissioner Schroedel.
Okay, if my dog starts barking, Commissioner Schroedel might have to take on here. I completely agree with a lot of the comments that's been brought up, and we are in a rock and a hard spot. I think Commissioner Lopes put it in a very good way. I will support I plan supporting the staff's recommendation. My concern has always been in the form of infrastructure needs. I do think that there will be a cumulative detrimental effect to our infrastructure as each of these small pieces of Legos get put together down the line. I think it's important for all of our service organizations, whether it be cities or districts. Well, actually, it'll be special districts in the county, in the water environment services, to look forward to creating master plans so that they can be ahead of the curve rather than waiting for infrastructure to cause damages that are beyond repair. So I would highly recommend that we try to be more proactive with our infrastructure needs. I know we talked philo to death, but I've always been in the camp that the philo fees themselves are not high enough. If we make that the true cost of doing business to a point of actually making it high enough of a cost, then it doesn't become something that you just buy into. You would actually just do the work. So, I would someday like to see transportation go back and do a true cost of doing business. I know how those costs get calculated, and they're calculated by the contractors and the developers, and not by the engineers at the county. So, because you guys don't have enough people to do all this work, but maybe there is an opportunity down the line to look at true cost of infrastructure, including sidewalks someday. But I totally appreciate the work that you all have done. The amount of, I've done not this work, but this kind of work, and I know how hard it is. So really, really appreciate all your work. So I plan on voting for recommendations by the staff. Thank you. And my dog was quiet.
Yay. Thanks, Commissioner Pack. Very, very well stated. Commissioner Schroedel?
Yes, thank you, Chair Stevens. I just want to say I echo most, if not all, of the comments I've heard. This is one solution of many that will be done in the future, or modifications. It's almost a living document, even though they are legal things, but things evolve over time. And where we're at right now, I support staff recommendation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Commissioner Schroedel. I appreciate it. And Commissioner Wilson?
Oh, I didn't lower my hand. I'm sorry. I would like to make a comment, though, that as we move forward and we take a vote, if we do take a vote on these things, that we do it by each one of the proposals, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Oh, I think let's get there in just a moment. Thank you, Commissioner Wilson, very much. Any other comments for deliberation? Oh, that's not. Okay. And then I don't have a lot to add other than, I do realize that the state pretty much gave us our marching orders, and I'm insanely impressed with staff's work on bringing every option we had and every option within an option and walking us through the impacts of each. It was so helpful, so well written. Also taking the opportunity through this process to update the comp plan and the ZDO where appropriate. What an efficient way to get our arms around keeping these things current and doing the work that needed to be done. I have to do a huge shout out to the outreach. I have never seen such an amazing outreach ever. That was so impressive. I think I spent this yesterday, more of my time reading that. That was just amazing to see all the comments, and kudos, Karen, just bravo. Other than that, I'm in support. I don't think we have a choice here. And so to speak to what Commissioner Wilson stated, I believe this evening we're basically either going to be making a recommendation to either staff's recommendation or a modification thereof versus going one by one. So at this time, I would like to call for a motion. And you're on mute, Commissioner Murphy. And go ahead, Commissioner Murphy.
I move to recommend approval of ZDO 282 to the Board of County Commissioners as recommended by staff.
Very good, thank you. And do we have a second, please?
I'll second that.
That would be Commissioner Lopes seconding. All right, so I'm going to move to help my little speech here. It has been moved by Commissioner Murphy and seconded by Commissioner Lopes that we, one moment, that we recommend approval of ZDO 282 to the Board of County Commissioners as recommended by staff. And Darcy, would you please take the roll or vote? And so we're either voting yes in favor of the motion, no opposed to the motion, or abstain, please.
Can I make a point of clarification?
Oh, yes, please.
Going back to Michael's comment,
Mhm.
was the motion to accept all 5 or
The motion was to accept staff's recommendation, which the
Included all 5.
recommendation was approval of all of the,
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify.
yes. Any other clarifications or? Okay, if you'll do the roll call, please, Darcy.
Commissioner Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Pack,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
No.
Commissioner Moss,
No.
Commissioner Lopes,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Schroedel,
Aye.
and Commissioner Stevens.
Aye. Very good. Thank you. Thank you again, staff. Bravo. And thank you, commissioners. That was quite, I think this is round 3. So that was very well done. Very efficient process. Really appreciate it. Okay, back to our agenda. Our next item is other business. Jennifer, anything else you wanted to bring up this evening?
I don't have anything else. I guess maybe I'll just mention, so the planning commission recruitment closed. Believe we had 5 applications, I think. I have not looked at them yet, but Darcy has forwarded those to me. And so what I'll be doing is just preparing a short memo for our department director to take to the weekly board issue session to find out how the board wants to move forward. You know, the last few years, a couple of commissioners have interviewed candidates, including incumbents. So I don't know if that will continue to be the practice this year or not, but I should have an answer to that here in, I don't know, 2 weeks maybe. And then
Will you remind us who the incumbents are, that terms are up, please?
I believe it is Commissioner Murphy and Commissioner Lopes who are up
Okay.
this time.
Okay.
And I
Thank you.
believe they both reapplied, I'm quite sure. So yeah, so I'll find out if the board, what they want to do, you know, if they want to be on a panel, if they want to interview everyone, whatever. We'll get an answer to that here in the next week or 2. And then I should have another update after that.
Wonderful. Jennifer, thank you so much. How about the calendar for planning commission is yet again empty. Do you just not value us?
It's
Or?
pretty empty. It's pretty empty. So there are currently no quasi-judicial applications in. And so there's nothing to review on that front. And of course, we are still fully occupied with this housing work. So until that gets through the board, we really won't have anything else to bring you. The only thing that's percolating out there is a presentation potentially on the county's climate action plan. I don't know if either Karen or Ellen have any update on what the possible timing. Are we looking at maybe May now? Do you know at all? I won't hold you to it.
I would say at this point, late April or May.
Okay. So
something to look forward to.
Exactly. Thanks, Ellen. So we can go ahead and officially cancel April 11th right now. And let's go ahead and continue to hold the 25th in case that ends up working, and we'll let you know potentially for this climate action plan presentation. And Glenn and I have a meeting, I think it's next week, to start talking about the next minor and time sensitive amendments package and just kind of figure out what all potentially might go into that. And so once we have a list of what we're thinking of and some, you know, thoughts about all of that, we would be scheduling a study session as we've done with the last couple packages, where we come and tell you, here's all of what we're thinking about, and here's any policy questions that might kind of have, you know, arisen regarding those topics. So that'll be coming, but it might not be until June. So, you know, maybe we can have something for you in May on that, but I just don't know. That's it.
Wonderful. I just actually saw on the chat that Commissioner Pack be out of the country, April 25 and May 9. So,
I'll be in Lisbon, so I will not be missing you all.
oh my goodness, Okay.
It'll be fun.
Oh
Visiting
yeah,
my
that
friends.
sounds like, so this is pleasure?
Yeah, I'm going to be visiting my son who's going to school in France.
Wow, how exciting. That's great. All right. And Board of County Commissioners, anything going wild and crazy there, Jennifer?
Well, of course, they'll have the hearing on this, their first hearing on the 27th of April, and then we've got 2 dates reserved in May in case, but you know, it may not be necessary since we're not really seeing a huge amount of testimony at this point. So maybe they'll get done in one as well. I don't know. They have finished everything else land use related. Just got the final couple of board orders wrapped up of things that you had previously seen or that the Historic Review Board had seen. So yeah, it's kind of a nice little lull here for a minute in terms of like zone changes and those kinds of things. But I know it'll heat back up again. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. Anyone? Tom, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And just not to make any more one jealous, that I'll be gone for 3 weeks myself in May. Finally get to go to Italy. We postponed for the last 2 years. I have a question. I was thinking about this today that, Tammy, I think this is your second year, right?
You want me out of here, don't you? Yeah, it is.
No,
actually.
not at all. I just remember after my second year, there was an election.
Yeah.
And I got voted out, I think. They didn't want me anymore.
I don't believe that, but yeah, I think at our next meeting, Jennifer, I think we'll be doing elections.
So it'll be, the bylaws state that it happens at your first meeting in May.
Oh,
okay.
If it turns out that you don't meet in May for whatever reason, we'll do it in June. I mean, that's not a big deal, but yes, the officer terms will expire at the end of April, and we try to coincide with appointing the new members so that you don't, potentially elect somebody who then doesn't continue to stay on the commission for some reason or something. So it's intended to align with that. So May would be the goal.
Yeah, it's not that I was dissatisfied. It's just that I just want to make sure that you get reelected and that we don't forget about it. That's all.
Fortunately, she's term limited. So the bylaws do say only 2 consecutive terms. So
oh my.
I've already warned Murph that we're probably going to
your turn.
Yeah, our vice chair, or I guess, vice chair may be up next. So yeah. He's been duly warned, but thank you, Tom. Yes, that 2 years was probably the quickest 2 years ever, but we weren't crazy busy. So it was fine. Yeah. It was good. I loved it. It was really, really fun.
Yeah. I remember mine ended just in time because that's when all the marijuana stuff happened after I left. Poor Mark, he had to lead those meetings, and I was so grateful.
Was that Brian that led the marijuana?
No, it was Mark Beek.
Oh. Ouch. Michael, you had a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to make an announcement here. My American Legion Post is sponsoring a Boys State and Girls State this year, and that goes from June 12th to the 18th, and it'll be at Western Oregon University, and it's for high school juniors, both boys and girls. And this is an opportunity for them to go down and set up a state government and learn how our state government functions. That would include, they would have individuals there that would be on the Supreme Court, governor, Secretary of State, all of those positions, and they would learn and actually function as a quasi state government. And I would recommend, if you have any child that's a junior in high school that wants to attend this is an excellent opportunity. In fact, some of the military academies look at this as a very positive thing in an application to go to West Point, the Annapolis, or the Air Force Academy. So if you know of anyone that has a junior in high school that wants to go from June 12th to the 18th. It's, they'll be in the dorms. They'll be, they're fed everything. My post will sponsor them. It's a $350 scholarship, and we will support them in this endeavor. So please, I will send you some information via email about how to apply for this, and hopefully you can pass this on to anyone that you know that has a high school junior that is interested in this type of an activity. It's a great summer week of education.
Oh,
Thank you.
Michael, that's such a great idea. Darcy, you've got 1 year to talk your daughter into this. What a great opportunity. Michael, if I happen to know of someone, we just go ahead to the American Legion's website or?
Well, I'm saying this, we're going to sponsor any child from Clackamas County that wants to attend this. They don't have to live in Milwaukee. They can be anyone in Clackamas County, and we will sponsor them.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for bringing that forward. Anyone else? Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. Wow, I think we might have set a record on that one. So thank you all. Good night.